here, I want to begin by acknowledging the seriousness of the concerns that have been raised. I understand the fear, the frustration, and the anger that many of you may be feeling. And as family members, you absolutely have the right to demand answers and accountability. That said, I also want to be clear, many of the claims we have heard at this point are allegations. We're not here to dismiss them, quite the opposite. Allegations deserve to be taken seriously and investigated thoroughly, and that is exactly what we're committed to doing. Our duty is to protect the safety, dignity, and rights of every individual in our custody. If misconduct has occurred, it will be addressed appropriately and transparently, but we also have a responsibility to ensure the conclusions are based on verified facts and not assumptions. I ask for your patience and understanding as we move forward. We're here to listen, to provide information where we can, and to make sure that every voice is heard as part of the process. Thank you. Who would like to speak?
Good morning again. I'm Ronnie Minter from the Freedom Unshackled Coalition. And I am before you today on behalf of the coalition alongside representatives from organizations committed to justice and human rights. Capital Area Urban League, Center for Law and Justice, Bridge the Gap Resource and Outreach, A Village, We Are Revolutionary, 100 Black Men, NAACP, True Heart, New York State Jails Justice, and New York State Council of Churches. We are here because Albany County Correctional Facility has become a site of unchecked brutality, human rights violations, and systemic abuse. Reports of extreme violence, medical neglect, and deliberate cover-ups by correctional staff and administrators have become impossible to ignore. The abuse inside Albany County Correctional Facility is not isolated. It is a systemic issue. Incarcerated individuals have been brutally beaten, denied legal visits, and subjected to inhumane conditions. Families and attorneys have reported that their loved ones have been hospitalized due to officer violence, only to be falsely accused of assaulting the officers. Eva Bass with Bridge the Gap will go over the timeline of these documented atrocities, but I will say this. What is happening inside Albany County Correctional Facility is not discipline. It is organized brutality. Officers are operating as a gang, and their actions are being protected by an administration that values cover-up over accountability. I am formerly incarcerated. I know how correctional officers operate with violence, lies, and cover-up. I've lived it. I have seen it firsthand. This is nothing new. It's just being exposed at this facility. Sheriff Apple, you are quick to say things are not happening in your jail that you would know. Did you know how badly they beat Marquise Norwood? Because we all saw that video, which co-signed every complaint we have received about that jail. Those officers' faces are clear in the footage, yet they are not in handcuffs for Class A felonies of assault or gang violence charges. Why? How is it that officers caught on video brutally attacking a man are still walking free while those behind bars have no recourse for justice? Now let's discuss those abandoned tiers. As an infectious disease educator, I can say with certainty that placing individuals in abandoned tiers filled with mold, rodent feces, and bed bugs is not just cruel, it is a public health crisis. Rodent feces can carry bacteria, viruses, and parasites that can cause severe respiratory illnesses. For individuals with compromised immune systems, these conditions can be deadly. This is not neglect. It is a deliberate endangerment. It is a calculated effort to circumvent the halt law by isolating incarcerated individuals in unlivable conditions instead of officially placing them in solitary confinement. Now, we acknowledge that correctional officers face difficult conditions. They are dealing with individuals coming off the street high on drugs. They are navigating incarcerated individuals with severe mental health issues, many of whom should have alternatives to incarceration. As a formerly incarcerated person, I have witnessed the challenges officers endure, situations that I could never personally withstand. However, none of that justifies being brutally beaten and the brutal assaults, medical neglect, or horrific conditions inside Albany County Correctional Facility. Sheriff Apple and Superintendent Lyons, you are responsible for this culture of violence and fear. Lyons oversees the daily horrors within that facility, and Sheriff Apple enables him by refusing to act. The ownership of this brutality is not just on the sheriff. It is equally on the superintendent, who is directly responsible for what happens in that facility. And yet Sheriff Apple's willingness to hire correctional officers who were fired from the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision only proves that your administration does not care about justice, only about saving money, because according to you, Sheriff Apple, these officers don't need training. No, they don't. They are already trained in excessive force and neglecting their responsibilities. They have already proven that they have no problem illegally walking off the job. Is this what the county legislators will support? Officers who defy the law rather than uphold it. So to be clear, we are not here to pat Sheriff Apple on the back or issue awards for a job well done. We are here to say, get your jail in order. Stop the beatings yesterday. The Albany County legislator must also be held accountable. You control the funding for the sheriff's office. If taxpayer dollars continue to fund an institution that allows brutality, then you too must bear responsibility. Funding should come with oversight, not a blank check for unchecked violence. What is happening inside that facility looks a lot like organized crime. When you have a facility where officers systematically engage in violence, cover up abuse, deny legal visits, and silence those who speak out, you have a criminal enterprise. And when you have leadership enabling that corruption, protecting violent officers instead of those in their custody, you have an organized system of lawlessness, should be investigated as such. We have seen what happens when brutality inside correctional facilities is ignored. Robert Brooks dies at Marcy's. Messiah Nawadi was killed at Mid-State. If this violence at Albany County Correctional Facility is not stopped, another life will be lost. This is not a matter of if, but when. We refuse to wait until another family has to bury their loved one. The time for justice is now. And I pass it off now to Eva Bass.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Eva Bass. I am the Executive Director of the Bridge the Gap Resource and Outreach, as well as the Executive Director of AVLHE, which is a community advocacy organization. First and foremost, Freedom Unshackled Coalition came together after there have been numerous inquiries about some incidents at Albany County Jail, which forced us to come as a community to gather together to have discussion to try to build and try to figure out a solution, not to go public, but have a solution to work in collaboration with Sheriff Apple's office. After that, we have submitted letters and a proposal to create a community advisory committee to help support fair treatment and equity in the Albany County Jail. Unfortunately, the response was very slow, and I would say very dismissive, and we were given the runaround. Instead of coming around the table and having a conversation with us face to face, we were given a runaround. We spoke to Praisner. What is his exact title? Inspector Praisner, which didn't necessarily end well. We still, aside from a letter that we received, that was a generic letter that was sent to everyone who made an inquiry or was a part of our original email, basically stated what Sheriff Apple just said in the beginning of this meeting. We still have not been able to have a face-to-face conversation aside from this public meeting. Nobody called press here. There was an email sent out to the county that alerted press and others in this room. Now, to the timeline and the incidents of the organized crime at Albany County Correctional Facility under Sheriff Apple and Superintendent Michael Lyons' supervision. Since January 2025, the Freedom Unshackled Coalition has documented a disturbing pattern of excessive force, denial of legal visits, and retaliation against incarcerated individuals who reported abuse. Families, attorneys, and even video evidence have confirmed these accounts. January 16, 2025, Jareen Daniels' mother reported her son was brutally beaten and denied contact with his lawyer and family. January 25th, 2025, Rakeem Rick's wife reported he was beaten, resulting in a chipped tooth, torn locks, and other injuries. Despite his injuries, he was falsely listed as refusing legal visits. January 30th, 2025, following community pressure, Inspector Preisner claimed he would visit the jail to speak to Daniels and Ricks. Hours later, he stated that the assistant superintendent overruled his visit, deeming it unnecessary. February 10th, 2025, Marquise Norwood released a video detailing his brutal beating by officers on September 25th, 2024, suffering a broken eye socket, facial fractures, and fluid leaking into his heart. Now, mind you, that video unfortunately mimics a lot of the complaints that we have got, and this was before we even knew about the video. So it confirmed that something is going on in Albany County Jail. February 26, 2025, Timothy Hall, a weekend detainee, contacted Freedom Unshackled and feared for his life, stating that officers were either going to beat him or set him up to be attacked. February 28, 2025, news outlets reported that according to Jacqueline Cabo, spokesperson for the State Commission of Corrections, 6 written complaints alleging misconduct at Albany County Correctional Facility has been referred to the County District Attorney's Office for investigation since January. March 6, 2025, a mother from Queens reported her son was brutally beaten, suffering facial fractures and broken nose, requiring surgery. When she called Albany County Correctional Facility for information, a sergeant hung up on her. March 10, 2025, a community member publicly testified during a county legislative meeting about the abuse of her loved one at Albany County Correctional Facility, further confirming the widespread of brutality. March 19, 2025, Timothy Hall reported being placed in the abandoned section of the jail, filled with mice, feces, bed bugs, and no hot water. Joaquin Riggs reported similar treatment, placed in an abandoned tier with rats, mice, and maggots in the shower as punishment. March 21st, 2025, news outlets report that Sheriff Apple announced his willingness to hire some of 2,000 correctional officers fired by Governor Hochul for participating in an illegal strike. Their actions led to the death of Jonathan Grant, who died in his cell after being abandoned by staff. These are just some of the documented complaints and issues that have been happening in Albany County. I have been serving Albany County for over 20 years, and I'm a lifelong resident. So I have many family members, friends, neighbors, and people who have entrusted in me that they have issues and complaints at Albany County Jail. These are things like brutality, mistreatment, denied medical treatment, and all of the above. And all we really asked Sheriff Apple was for us to come together as a coalition to collectively find solutions, not publicly humiliate you, not publicly go out and tear down the Albany County Jail and your services, but to really figure out how we can mitigate these issues. But we keep on getting a runaround. And I am insulted for the way that we have to come around the table right now. I would have rather a more intimate setting so that we can sit down and talk and build relationship and create resolutions and come together as a community to make sure we are safe, even though incarcerated individuals may or may not have committed crimes. I know for 100% fact I have a family member that was just released from prison after serving 20 years, lost his life with his son, his family, being falsely incriminated. So Albany County Jail doesn't necessarily mean the people there are guilty of their crime. They are awaiting trial, they are waiting to be properly represented, and we entrust Albany County Jail to make sure at least they have humane and safe conditions. So I ask you, Sheriff Apple, to take these concerns seriously. I don't care if you're in litigation. Right now, action needs to happen. Your officers need to be held accountable, and you have video footage that I know that you have seen where you can start addressing these issues right now. And next, I'm going to call...
Time. Let me just respond to you about I have no intent to correctional officers that were fired. My issue with the way that it was being done for the state COs was that there was no due process, no anything, and they were just done. I haven't hired any correctional officers, unlike what Mr. Mishler indicated on his Facebook post. That never happened. The state COs that I have resigned over the course of years of just not wanting to travel anymore, or just didn't like the conditions. Those are the folks that we hire. That's that. Secondly, have I ever denied anybody in this room a phone call if you called for me?
I've called for you. I've called for you since this started.
I haven't spoken to you, Ronnie?
No, not since this started. You said Praisner, who, in my opinion, really didn't handle this well. Because had he stopped saying to us, I'm going to call right now, I'm going to see the video. Well, if you are the extension of Sheriff, and I said that to you one night when I saw you, if you're an extension of the sheriff, you're telling me you're the sheriff's right-hand man. How are you saying to me a month later that you still have not seen that video footage? How are you saying to me the day the assistant superintendent said to you, it is unnecessary for you to talk to these people? I don't understand that part. And I was really disappointed. I'm not going to say a lie to you because I tried my best to be an advocate for you. Sheriff Apple's going to call. Sheriff Apple's going to take care of this. When the first call came, don't worry about it. I'm going to call Sheriff Apple. He'll take care of this. You said praise them. We was happy to talk to him initially. But it just kept being one lie after another. Because here you have this, what Praisner's telling us, but then you have these families who don't know each other saying almost the same damn thing, Sheriff. And I'm like, well, where is the sheriff? I even called Kim. He tells Sheriff Apple to call me. Like, I don't know. I don't know where the breakdown came between me reaching out to you.
I don't know either, but anybody that usually calls for me or wants to come in and have a face-to-face, I'm more than happy to sit down with them. It is kind of sad that it came to this point where we all have to have this public forum, but I'm hoping, again, as I said at the start of this, that we can break out into some smaller sessions, whatever the concerns are. I can tell you, as far as refusing to bring people down for legal visits, I mean, that lawyer, I'm assuming, would call us. I can tell you, as far as medical, my medical at that county jail, I will put up against any county or state facility around. I have had that company in there for 9.5 years, and thank God I have never had a lawsuit. Anybody denying any issues regarding medical, nothing. This company's very expensive.
As someone who's former incarcerated, who's been in your jail, I can contest that someone was being forced to work in your jail with a broken leg. And even after they found out he had a broken leg, they still kind of wanted him to work.
Who wanted him to work?
Your jail. Because at the end of the day, when a person is sentenced to a county bullet within your jail, it is required for them to work, or they will lose time. It is required for them to
force them to work.
It's required for them to work, or they lose time, they lose good time, and they'll also have to spend moments in the box. And this is the way that your jail explains to people who are required to work in your jail. So if you're telling me it's a different policy, again, we're telling you, you need to relay these things to your staff because they're not showing up in the culture you're explaining to the public.
Not even that, Sheriff Apple. I actually was, when I was in your jail, I wrote up one of the nurses. I wrote it up. They asked me to take the write-up back. Can't remember her name now, but she used to work at. It's just not the fact. It was within that 9 years you're talking about. So you're saying that within the 9 years you have the best staff, medical staff, but I wrote her up. I wrote her up, and they had to come talk to me about it because I actually know how to write. And so she should not have treated me the way she did. And as a result, I wrote her up, and it's probably still in her jacket.
Are you
from what I
talking about
understand.
saying something offensive or doing something medically?
It doesn't matter. You said just your medical staff can stand up against anyone,
Absolutely.
anywhere, and I don't. And then they didn't send these people out. This guy had to have surgery. One of these kids had to have surgery because your medical staff said that it was nothing wrong with his eye.
So, if I may, my name is April, again, with the Capillary Urban League. I'm pretty new around here, and I heard that this is our first time meeting Sheriff Apple, but I've heard that folks are all in and you are elected. They voted for you because of your ethics. They voted for you because you did things like open the jails for addressing housing insecurity, for newcomers, migrants, and even voter registration in the jail. So I'd like to suggest we take you up on your offer that you presented at the beginning and have set repeated, that we figure out a way to start addressing this or putting in solution and having a conversation, maybe not with the press around, but in a way where we can move forward. We can sit here and, I mean, we have a checklist of just this year concerns going on in the jail. So I'd like to see that Sheriff Apple, not the Sheriff Apple that I'm hearing stories about now, not being able to address some of the concerns in the jail.
And just for clarity, just because somebody's making an allegation doesn't mean that that's the circumstance. All right. Now, I can tell you right now, there are not rats in the cells in the county jails. Could there be some mice poop? Absolutely. Place is 100 years old. Absolutely. Could there be a little bit of mold somewhere? There's showers, everything else. It's probably no different than somebody's house. But I also think that, hold on a minute. You had your time to talk. Give me a second. I also believe that, you know, people can also pitch in. It's not the CO's duty to go and clean and search every cell for that. All right? But if it's brought to our attention and the CO doesn't make a corrective action, then it should go to another level. All right? I agree, you know, we need to sit down, and somewhere in the middle of all of this is going to be the truth, right? We'll shake it out here somewhere. But again, I'm all for sitting down with some groups of you folks. We'll go up to the jail and we'll look at some of the issues that you're bringing. Listen, do some horrible things happen in there? I'm not going to sit here and say never, not on my watch. Absolutely not. Again, I said somewhere in the middle is the truth, right? But I can't also just sit here and have you tear the place down, because I've got 300-400 hardworking men and women that are facing some cruel conditions as well, that are in there busting their ass every day to keep men and women safe. So again, I would love to sit down with you. I will carve time out of a weekend or a weeknight. I don't know what your schedules are like, but I've never said no. I've never said no. And the weird thing is that prior to all of these allegations, I literally had 24, 25 community advocates up to the correctional facility to take a tour and to address other issues. And this was right after the horrible actions out there at, what was it? Marcy. With Robert Brooks. And I said, you know what, let's bring some community folks in and have them sit down and try to quell some of their concerns. I don't want a family member at home sweating bullets to see if my loved one's getting beaten, my loved one's going to live through the weekend. I don't want that. I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
So we're as an urban league, and as a coalition, we're serious about addressing the issue. And I think the credit, we've acknowledged, right, and given credit to the conditions that your officers are going through as well. But it's really important that we figure out how to communicate and not allow the conditions that have been documented and that families are coming forward and acknowledging and pointing out. Those can't continue, and I don't think it's good enough to say it happens, right? It doesn't have to be this way.
Well, I agree, but you're also getting a certain portent as well. Would you admit that?
No.
You've seen this?
Oh, in
Yes.
terms of the news, I've
We've
heard
all
it from
seen it.
people who've
It's public.
experienced it. And I have also my, relationship with seeing how, especially with restorative justice, right? That's important to the Urban League as well. So I think we're all connected to this in one way or another. Whether we've been there and experienced it physically, that doesn't make it right. And it doesn't diminish what I'm saying.
I can tell you this, and I agree with you, but I'm connected to you as well, because there's nobody in this room, not any of the lawyers, not any of the legislators, nobody in this room that's done more for restorative justice than me. And I will stand in front of everybody and say that. We've done everything known to human beings to try to keep people from coming back, set them up when they get out, everything.
And
So I understand what you're
that's the sheriff
saying.
we want to talk to.
I understand what you're saying.
That's the sheriff we want to have a conversation.
But it's one thing to say you've done everything you've done to keep people from coming back, but we're talking about while they're there. So now, I know that Wanda Willingham spoke to you in regards to a weekender, correct?
Yes.
All right, so obviously you must have made a call or whatever.
Yes.
Since you made that call, he's been treated even worse and even worse. He got flung into a wall head first last weekend. That boy called me, a man, let me say, called me crying Monday, said, Ronnie, I can't go in there. And I tried to talk to him to go in there. They're putting him on an abandoned tier. 6-4 and 6 West is not an overflow tier. It has been abandoned.
I will
And
address this because I spoke to him face to face, actually Tuesday morning.
I know he goes to
Wednesday.
court. He goes to
Wednesday.
court tomorrow. He did not go in Monday. He did not go in Monday. And him and I was texting this morning, and I asked him again, did he talk to his lawyer? And I'm supposed to speak to his lawyer this afternoon. So again, Sheriff Apple, I hear what you're saying, and for some reason, I just in me, I want to believe you. I don't believe what's happening in your jail. That's my problem. When I'm talking to you, and I felt like you and I had a friendly relationship, I felt like I believe what you're saying. I don't believe your superintendent, Mr. Lyons, doesn't know what's happening there. I don't believe that the majors don't know what's happening there. And I don't believe that there's not a gang of officers running around there beating on those men and women in there. I've seen them beat on the women. Okay?
All right,
There are
let me
women
just
here
address-
who have been beat
Let me
in your
just
jail.
address Tim Hall real quick. I know he's not here. He did, in fact, send a message to Wanda Willingham, the deputy chairman of the legislature. Said he needed to be moved. He's a weekender, whatever. When I hear weekender terms, I normally assume Friday to Sunday night,
Monday to
morning.
Wednesday.
He's got a really weird schedule. It's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I honestly have never seen that before. But regardless, so he was moved. He was moved in my direction, and he was put down on those tiers not as punishment, but to get away from the rest of the inmates, to keep him safe. So he was moved. You can believe it or not, but that was at my direction. Okay. Now, he did indicate to me on Wednesday when I saw him face to face, he indicated that, you know what, there's mice crap down there, this and that. Well, there may be. It was a closed down tier, all right? I'm not saying the place is perfect by no means, but I would also want to make my living space as clean as possible. So again, I don't know what he's telling you, but I did have a face-to-face conversation with him on the picnic table in front of the county jail as he was departing his sentence. But I'll follow up with him. Got no problem there.
But the thing too, though, Sheriff, is that Joaquin Ricks was put on 604 East also. And when we talked to Inspector Praser about it, he said it was an overflow tier. And then I said, well, who else is down there if it's such an overflow? He said, no one. I said, so he's down there by himself. That's absolutely true. You said that was an overflow tier. Who else was on that call?
I was on that call.
Did he not say that to us?
Yes, he did.
I mean, let's not do this. Let's not do that. You said it was an overflow tier and that he wasn't down there by himself. No, that he was there by himself at the time. And then I said, well, who's monitoring that? We all asked you questions about that. We all was concerned about that. And again, so it sounds as if the east wing, the 4 and the 6 west, is somewhere that's not normally used. It is overrun, whatever's going on in there here with rodents and whatever the heck, maggots, whatever. But it seems like it's being used as a punishment. That's what it appears. Now, I am not a liar, okay? If I say it, that means that's what I heard, or that's what I saw. So please don't ever do that again, Mr. Praisner. Don't ever do that again. Because not only did you say it, I have it recorded. Don't forget that part. I recorded each conversation, so don't do that.
Who got the point?
Sheriff Apple?
Yes, ma'am.
I was on the 2 calls with Inspector Praisner, and I have to say that up until that call, I had only heard wonderful things about you from Ronnie Minter. And I've known Ronnie for a long time. I only heard good things about you. I felt that you were a good person who was working within the establishment to have the best situation for incarcerated people. During that phone call, hard questions were put to Inspector Praisner, and he indicated in both phone calls that he was going to act on it. When he came back in the second phone call, he indicated that the superintendent didn't share information with him because the superintendent said he didn't have to, it was taken care of, he didn't have to know. From an optics point of view, this doesn't look like you and your agents, your deputies, are representing you in the best light. You don't look like you're being represented in the best light because you have the final say. You're in charge of Albany County Jail. If you blindly trust, I'm not saying you do, I'm talking about optics. I'm saying about what happened in this phone call that has me upset. If you blindly, according to Officer Praisner, accept what the superintendent tells you, that's a recipe for a cover-up. That means anything and anything can happen in a jail and you won't know about it. He never got back to us with substantive information. So you need to really talk to him about this, because if you really care about what's going on and you're on top and your finger is on the pulse, that was not represented to us, that was not presented to us by Inspector Praisner. And that did not make you look like you care, frankly. I'm being honest with you.
I appreciate that.
We have the New York State Council of Churches speaking. Yes.
Yeah.
I had to say that.
The New York State Council of Churches is here. For one thing, I serve on the board, and I'm the primary person working at criminal justice reform issues across the state. And we're here because we understand that theologically, these are our brothers and sisters serving time in your jail. And as you've heard, biologically, some of them are brothers and sisters of people here. Mothers, fathers, children. We're all related. We're all equally loved. Some of us have done wrong things, need to serve time. Nobody deserves to be beaten, ever, for any reason. When I see this many allegations, and I agree they are allegations, I understand that, but this many different people say that this stuff is going on, I gotta believe that where there's smoke, there's fire. And there's a hell of a lot of smoke here right now. I think those questions deserve to be answered. We need to look into this further. We need to shine a light inside that prison, inside that jail, and make sure we all know what's going on. And as far as this, you're being disappointed that this was a public meeting, as I understand it, you made it into a public meeting after this coalition asked for a private meeting.
No idea what you're talking about.
We got an email saying that we were invited to a community meeting.
I wanted to have you guys here. I knew there was going to be a large group of you, so I decided to move the meeting over to here to have a meeting. I don't care if it's public or not. It's irrelevant. I don't care, it's being tased. It means nothing.
We have someone else from the New York State Council of Churches.
Hi, Rashida Tyler, Deputy Executive Director of the New York State Council of Churches. And I just want to say that this is my first time meeting you, but I will say the reputation of the Albany County Jail precedes this conversation. Just in terms of speaking with people who live in Albany and the treatment and brutality that they have suffered, it is very concerning. As Reverend Jim stated, that everyone is our brother and our sister, and then in Albany or small Albany it's related, more people are related than not. So these are their families, and the experiences that they're sharing are real. And so I look at the list of incidents here, and I see these are lived experiences. They're allegations, but as Reverend Jim was saying, they're pretty substantial. And if we were to think about, circumstantial evidence, things like that, there's a lot here. And if I were in charge of any organization that had this many allegations coming out and the reputation of people in the community saying these things, I would be wanting to hold every single person who's on my ship accountable. I would want to walk every inch of that facility to make sure that there's not, rodent feces, it's not all these things that people are saying. I don't want to rely on anybody else because I'm the person in charge. At the end of the day, I would be responsible. So I would want to talk to every single person that made these allegations and find out if there is that truth. And I would make sure that my ship was right. And so, I'm coming at this and speaking to many people across the state. This is not a situation that is isolated in Albany County. I'm from Ulster County. We had to do the same thing there. Where there is not light in places, there's lots of things that can fester and lots of things that can rot. And so we want to make sure that there's a lot of light and a lot of eyes on everything happening in Albany County Jail and in facilities across New York State, because it's the only way to make sure that justice is actually being served for the people who, yes, may have done something wrong, but there's people making sure that the people who are there are also not inflicting harm to them and going outside of the parameters of justice, because that turns into an injustice. And then the system itself is, it reflects on it.
I understand that, and I'm not going to sit here and debate it with you. I will consume and absorb what you said, and again, we'll hopefully have some other breakout sessions. But I also could have sat here with a list of allegations that all of the 100 injuries and assaults against the correction officers, but I don't take circumstantial evidence, I take factual evidence. So again, we got to sort this all out. We'll sit down. We can have some community leaders come present. I'd love to have some additional meetings with you folks. And let's target it one by one. But I can't sit here and have you pass out a piece of paper with these allegations and just, you want me to think that every single thing there is accurate. I just have that hard time believing that.
I just have one question.
We have the NAACP.
The NAACP, Deborah, is here. We'd like her to speak, please.
Good morning, everyone. As I said, my name is Deborah Brown, and I'm the president of the NAACP. But I do want to say to you, Sheriff Apple, I'm not hearing everyone just saying, take this as gospel. I'm not hearing, and with that same idea in mind, we're not asking you to right now defend everything that's been said. I spent 38 years with state government. I retired as an assistant commissioner, and 10 of those years I worked with individuals calling in with complaints about our services. I had to listen with an open ear. I have to say, possibly, yes, this might have happened. And I had to go back to the people who they were complaining about and talk to them. And also then listen with an ear. Because some of the things they did may not have been intentional, but they did it and it was wrong. So I gotta be open to hear that and to say that. And coming back at people and saying that, we're saying you have to defend all the officers, all the guards, is not so. And I think, to me, having done this type of work, that's an area you need to work on, because you don't have to defend them. And giving out your phone number to everyone doesn't mean that's the answer, because not everybody's going to call you. Not everybody, just like what I'm hearing now, that you're defending the people, you're not even hearing here. I'm telling you what I'm telling you from my lens. Okay, but no one said that here. No one said that here. So you're taking that. You came in with that. You have to look at that. Just like anyone who works with people have to do that. Because I could come back to you and say, but that's their job. They've taken this job knowing some of the risks that are involved in the job. Not saying it's right, not saying it's correct, but that's what we all have to deal with. Okay? So we have to have that open, honest conversation. And if that's what the next breakout opportunity to meet in the breakouts is what you're going to offer, I'm all for that. And I think most of the folks here are all for that. I attended the meeting that you had the community organizers come. That was my first time in the jail in that type of capacity. So I got to see things. I got to see that, for the unsheltered, the program there. I was impressed by that. And I've heard people say the fact that they're able to interact with you. And they were impressed by that. I had some concerns because I need to see the fullness of the individual. But yes, the idea that they could call you on the phone, and as someone said earlier, when I would talk, the conversation I've had with Ronnie, she always had the best. Okay. But there are issues, and that we can't walk away from. You can't walk away from. All the folks in this room, depending what position they have, cannot walk away from that. It doesn't mean everybody. Nothing means that it's everybody. But you can't walk away that it happens. And if it's happening, it's a problem. If an individual is doing it to an inmate, it's a problem. And we can't say it's okay. Thank you.
We have the 100 black men here who would like to speak, please.
Yes, good morning. I'm Richard Harris. I'm the president of the 100 Black Men in the Albany Capital Region. And first of all, it's been documented that there's abuse in our correctional facilities. We all know that. Everybody in this room knows that. Not saying that the sheriff or anybody else wants to see that happen, but it happens. Okay, so that's a given. We're not here. I'm not here to discuss what happened in the past. What we have to do is look at what we're going to do now. What are we going to do in the future? One of the things that I like to see happen, we have to have transparency and we have to have accountability. That's clear. We're pointing the finger. Some people are pointing the finger at the sheriff. Sheriff, I know him personally. He could be doing a wonderful job. But that doesn't account for the behavior of the people that you work with, okay, and work with you. So putting that aside, one of the things I like to see you support and everybody in this room support is an Albany County Correctional Facilities oversight, citizen oversight board. Citizen oversight. You have to shine the light on what's happening at the correctional facilities. That's what we need. We all need that. We all benefit. One is inmates benefit, their loved ones and family benefits. You, Sheriff, you benefit because you have civilians that are looking at the whole picture, whether it's in defense of the inmates or in defense of the correctional officers, right? And the whole county and the county legislature, they have to support this. Why? When we have these lawsuits, when you look at what's happening here, this results in more lawsuits. And these are people and families that are injured. This not theory. We're not talking about theory like we're sitting here around the table. We're talking about real injuries. People going to Albany Med with facial injuries and have to have surgery after that. So what are we talking about? You know, it's not a matter of anybody pointing the finger at the sheriff or his people right now. It's all of us. We have to change the situation. We have to address the situation. Now, I heard you say you've done everything you could do in your power. Well, I'm going to give you something else that we can do. You in your power, we in our power.
I didn't say all.
Okay, you've done quite a bit then, Sheriff. I give you that, okay? But we all could support shining a light on correctional facilities, right? And there's models of it all over the country of what I'm proposing, right? I'm proposing that we have an Albany County Correctional Facilities Citizens Oversight Board. That's what I'm proposing. And as I say, the legislators that are here, they can look it up. We can start the legislation now. And we have to make these changes now. This is time for change. We see what's happening in this country, right? We want to maintain a democracy. And it starts with being fair and being honest, open and honest about what's going on. And what's going on, we all know that there's been abuses in many of our correctional facilities. But we know for sure, I've seen the videos, that there's been some in Albany County, right? We all know that. You know it, Sheriff, I know it, and everybody sitting here knows it, okay? And if anybody doubts it, what we can do is show you a videotape of a man being abused. And there's one thing that happened that caught my eye. Because I don't have a criminal justice background. But when I seen a young man being abused, and there was like a blue wall that blocked out the cameras. So you couldn't see it. It started with the abuse with sneakers. The fellow was dealing with sneakers. And then they started to abuse him. Then you had so many correctional officers, like 10 or 15, blocking the camera. So it's like a blue wall. That's how I refer to it. So we have to do away with blue walls, and we have to move forward positively. And what we could wind up doing, we could have a model program in Albany County, okay? I want us all to consider what I'm proposing. Thank you.
Next, we are Revolutionary.
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Lukey Forbes. I'm the executive director of We Are Revolutionary. I want to start this off by saying I'm someone who's formerly incarcerated. I was in Albany County Correctional Facility twice, well, really 3 times. And I experienced a lot about what we're talking about inside your facility. Unlike a lot of folks here, I didn't just read about these things. I didn't just hear about these things. Parents didn't just call me. I was actually one of the folks giving messages to people's family members on the outside about what just happened to their loved one inside your jail. Now, growth happens when you don't just allow people around you that just tell you yes about everything. You can't just have people that praise you, that give you awards, that make you seem like everything you're doing is valid, or even that the little you do is valid in a world where we see that people are literally dying, being harmed, and it's hurting our community. This city of Albany, this county of Albany, it is small. There are a lot of people who know everyone here, right? We all know everyone here. This city is not as big as we think it is. It's only 100,000 people in population in the city of Albany. Really 99,000 if we want to be technical. Now, when we're thinking about that, your jail is filled up of people who really come from poverty of Albany, which is even small. You're talking about people we personally know. When I was in Albany County Jail at 16 years old, I remember being in my cell on the old unit after they brought us over there, and I agree with you, it does take a lot for an individual to want to clean their space, right? It is necessary, especially because your jail has a tendency of moving people to old parts of the jail and expecting them to clean those spaces. So yes, we had to clean those spaces out. But when they put us in that old side of the jail, I remember one day when your officers did a search, right? This is the culture of your jail. that unfortunately I didn't have the privilege of going in there like some of the advocates that you had. I had the unfortunate privilege of being an inmate in your jail. So I'm not sure as to what parts of the jail you toured them to or during what type of actions, right? I don't know if you took them by when a unit was being searched or if you actually watched that unit be searched from camera without letting your officers know that you were there watching that unit be searched. Because what I saw at 16 years old on a minor unit was an officer walk in there and smack everyone from cell 1 all the way to cell 8. And then when they got to cell 16, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a young man, we nicknamed him Country because he sounded like he was from the country. He was asleep when your officers came in to do that cell search. Now, I bet you can imagine what happened to him, right? Because when those officers tried to wake him up, he was confused. And in his confusion, he asked, what is going on? And instead of explaining to him they were trying to search his cell, they beat him. All of them ran in there, and they started to beat him, bounce him around in the cell. We could hear it because you have metal walls in the old side of the jail. And then they took him out in the middle of it. And that was the first time I've ever heard the saying, I can't breathe, because that's what he was yelling. And then when they took him out of that cell, they made him place his hands on the bar as high as he can while they continued to punch him in his ribs. And some of them laughed at it. Then they did not take him off the unit. They didn't remove him because he didn't do anything wrong. They searched his cell and they went about their days. And he went back in his cell after being beat up by grown men. And when we see that type of culture in your jails, it's something that your officers know. They know because they nickname each other these toxic names that reflect how violent they are. Whether it's Monster, whether it's Superman, whether it's any of these toxic symbols of what they represent. Whether it's shoot 'em up cowboy, right? Like we're talking as if, because I get it, these folks may not know. You're going to show them what you want to show them. And I hear you say, not everybody should be on this board that you're willing to have. Not everybody should be allowed in those private breakaway sessions that you want to have. I get it. You rather people that may give awards.
You guys have said that a few times.
Taking it personal?
If you're taking it personal, that's a personal thing. But can I finish what I'm saying, please?
Because you
Excuse me,
choose to talk
He has the
about
floor. He has the floor. He has the floor.
Hey, my meeting, my rules. We don't argue. You're talking. Go ahead, please.
Appreciate you. I appreciate you so much. We're really trying to heal this community. We were called by mothers, by fathers, by individuals who were harmed. I'm an individual who has witnessed harm directly in your jail. Again, I'm telling you, my associates have witnessed your medical staff ignore that they have stomach issues, that they just can't eat anything. So when they're eating these quick chill bags, it's making them throw up continuously. And your medical staff tell them, well, this is a jail, you gotta deal with it. I witnessed your people continuously go to medical because they had a messed up leg even before they got to your jail. And then after going outside of your jail to realize it was broken, even though they kept complaining and were forced to work. Again, your policy may be different than the actual culture that your jail is promoting. And what we're asking for is an actual community oversight board. So when these allegations come up, that is not stuck in. Because I get it, you want to have trust in your officers. You want to have faith that when Superintendent Lyons is telling you something that he's not lying, right? But unfortunately, at times, we have to look deeper. And this culture of good old boys, of working together to hide something, to minimize something, it cannot continue. And it will not continue because cameras and social media has made it to the point that I apologize. It's out there. The ugly is out there. You may make it seem like this is one runoff situation, but 15 officers ran on Marquise. You may make it seem like that's not normal. The way they acted and they dogpiled him, they made it seem like that was their routine. I don't know how you teach your officers control, but does it take 10 to 15 officers to subdue one individual? So when you talk about 100 cases of officers assault, I want to think, was this 10 officers and one of them got a twisted ankle because he tripped over his partner? Was one of them trying to climb into the dog pile and got elbowed by his buddy who was just going crazy and not paying attention to where his hands were hitting? Like, what type of culture are we actually speaking upon? Because I was a person in those jails, and I can tell you, individuals with murder charges don't raise hands towards your officers without being provoked. I haven't seen it. But I haven't done 25 years inside your facility, so I'm not making it seem as if it's something that's impossible. But what I have seen is your officers challenge 16-year-olds to a fair fight and then end up jumping them. That I have seen. Okay. I have seen your officers beat individuals in their cells who didn't provoke it, who may have said minor things, who may have just been walking a little too tough that day while an officer was upset. I have seen those things. And that's the culture we would love to address. Those are the things that we would love to talk about. We applaud you for making the homeless shelter within your facility. We applaud you for every time you take a step towards criminal justice reform. But the moment you ignore organized crime in your facilities, this is organized crime. And that's what we continuously say, because when we see organized crimes in our community, it's investigated in a certain way. However, when it gets to these jails, we only investigate these individual cases instead of the organized around how these individual cases happen.
Thank you, Loki.
Thank you. And then there was True.
True Heart, Batman.
Not for nothing, I just want to be very clear, how we move forward is incredibly important right now. I'm on our Community Police Review Board for the City of Albany, and the goal of our board is to establish trust. Trust between the community and our police enforcement, right? We don't have that right now in our county jails. That's why we're asking for this. The goal of our inclusion is to get to a place where we can trust that our loved ones are safe while they're there. And I agree, these big goofy meetings with cameras and everything else is not the best way to get there, right? To be fair, when these things happened, I was a part of that tour as well. Super welcoming, food was great, it was a good time, absolutely. We asked at that time what kind of community oversight existed in your structures. And it was, hey, just call my phone, bro, we got you. Cool, that sounds good. As these things happened, we tried those things. We made those calls, we tried to talk to people, we tried to have meetings. We absolutely got nowhere. If our mechanisms of communication don't exist, we don't have a way to get additional information, we don't have a way to check, we don't have a way to ensure there's accountability when a bad thing happens, then we don't have that level of trust. We don't have that level of trust in the community and the people that we send our loved ones to you. So for that reason, as our review board, we've done these things, we've set them up, we've developed them over time, and there is a duality. You have done a lot of great things, not gonna hold you. You've done programs, like you said, house people and stuff. A lot of people wouldn't do that. Cool, absolutely, that's great. No one is taking away from that. What you do defines you. You have an opportunity right now to be that stand-up sheriff that they heard so much about. Hey, listen, I know there's problems. We're going to address it. We're going to move forward. Transparency will involve, because, again, Ronnie was one of your biggest supporters.
Biggest fan.
If you involve Ronnie in these actions, she's a credible messenger that it allows that community oversight piece. It allows that transparency. It allows us to have this faith and the belief and to be fully supportive of you and your efforts. So, again, we appreciate the things that you've done, 100%. Please don't let it stop there. As our Albany Review Board, we'll talk to you about what we went through, how we can move this process along faster. Doesn't have to be in front of the cameras and all this wildness. However we can help move that along, I'm down to do that. It's all about the systems and structures we put in place. Hey, just give me a call. I hoped that would work. It didn't. At this point, we have additional complaints. We have conflicting medical reports. We have people first in. We have this. We have rumors and stuff that may or may not be true. We need to be a part of dissecting that information, seeing what's true and what's not, and disseminating that information to the general public. Please allow us to be a part of that process. This is something that we've all entrusted you with. And again, you've not been the worst person ever. You've done a lot of great things. Please keep that going and use this as an opportunity to move forward, to get Ronnie back on your team. She's one of your biggest supporters, bro. Those kind of things are the tangible structures, communication paths that we can create that help us all moving forward. We don't want to be here. Nobody wanted to have this whole big thing. So however I can be a part of it, however I can be supportive, let me know, and I'm absolutely down to help move things forward.
So we're gonna.
Thank you.
Next, we have Jails Justice.
I was New York State Justice. What that is that, well, we have someone in there talking about jail. In order for you to get your, you want to ensure that the jail, there's a few things that happen. First of all, let me be very clear. In the jails, they're not inmates, they're detainees, right? Right? They're detainees. So you're going to assume that they detained, they're not guilty or whatever. What I did was, when I was looking and listening, I looked around the room. And I'm glad that we had this. Because as I look around the room, I can see people, I can see it disturbed. And I guess it was because they're holding you to these houses for these things. And yet you're trying to do these things. I looked at the youth and I said, well, there's lots of problems. Right? Now, because you're dealing with these guys in the union, you got these guys in the union, they're able to do whatever. The guy with the senior. Come on. So there has a problem, I understand that. I then heard you say a few things about this and that. And the thought was, how do you correct the issues of it being physical? It's hard to, you can't really speak on it. Then I looked around the room and I looked at eyes and I thought, oh, I seen the disturbance. I seen your reaction. I seen that you wanted to say something. Look at your partner. He began to cue you. He cue you to do these things to say not just here. So I'm looking around the room. I think, for me, I'm glad that we had this. Because it began to show. It began to show. And I think if you take a look, the snapshot of the room, I think that you heard that, you know what, when you first got the job, I think you did wonderful things. I think you did some wonderful things. I think that's what you continue to do. You continue to be that, right? And because of that, you got power. Because of that very thing, your success, you got somebody's going to be on your face. And you don't. So you know they was telling you that you need to have some type of understanding. Before you go, I say two things, and then you go. But my it's the hard part that the hard part when you talk about the culture. This is just not, like I said, this is your state. I'm ordinary. So this is just not that. We need to really take a look at some of the things that's happening. And when we talk about these officers that's coming from the state and being hired, you look at the whole situation with the state, and we're talking about this happened, you know, the man got killed. So I would want to be, take a look to be able to say, let's take a look at his jacket when you hire him. Let's take a look at his jacket that he didn't have these things that was in it. Because you don't want to allow, and I'm not just saying you, but you're representing. So we can't allow them to get to that point where they become unionized, and it's hard to get rid of these guys. Right? So like I said, we're here, we're watching, And you know, for me, it's just because I stay around the state. I'm from Albany, so when I hear these things that's going on in Albany, I'm like, wow. Right? I'm like, wow. So I think that we should address it. I think that Ronnie did a wonderful job. I think that some of his and I think the Council did a wonderful job. They brought the people to support what we did. I think that we can continue to do is a wonderful job. I think that it's not just about blowing smoke up your butt, but it's about being accountable, being transparent, removing those things that's detrimental, like the you not know for either saying these things. That's not good.
Next, we have Center for Law and Justice.
Good morning. A couple of things I wanted to cover, but first, Sheriff, I'll say this. We met with you a couple months ago after a long time having a conversation, right? And one of the things that you said to me is that you wanted transparency from us, from the center. And I said, okay, Sheriff, that's one thing that I can commit to you as long as when we need something and I call, you meet me halfway. And so I want to take the air out of it and just say that there are tons of allegations on this paper. And I can't say they're right or they're wrong, but what I can say to you is that it does owe every person in the facility a right to have it looked into, right? Because that's what the responsibility in your role is. You told me to keep it 100. These allegations are crazy. To this date, I still have people come into my office on a regular basis with very similar situations and very similar issues. That's number one. Number two, community oversight is important. You know, I've heard you say a couple of times, hey, give me a call. And you're absolutely right. We could absolutely give you a call. But on the other end, doesn't it do us a little bit more justice to have an outside body come in and say, all right, take the sheriff out of it, take us out of it, let's look at the truth and see what actually happened so that we can get down to the solution. And so I think that that's important and something that you should consider moving forward. And I don't think I had any, you know, I just met with the chief in Albany and we talked about the Community Police Review Board, and he said to me, hey, listen, it has no negativity to me because it adds another level of supervision and accountability. And then the one thing that the center is known for advocating is making sure that people have the adequate connection to legal visits in connection with attorneys. I've heard multiple times that people have been denied visits with their attorneys for a variety of different reasons, and that, hey, on the outside of that, once that denial is given, it's written down as the inmate has refused. And so I don't know whether true or not true, but my mother always told me, old school, right, and I'm not old, is that you hear it once, okay. You hear it twice, you start to question it, you hear it 3 times, and you're like, oh shit, like, we need to figure that out. And Sheriff, I'm telling you that I've heard that more than 10 times. And so when 10 different people and 10 different families are saying it, then we have to say, all right, we need to look into that. The last thing I'll say is this. It would be one thing if we came to you, Sheriff, and we said, hey, there's one incident, right? But every person at this table, every person that I've talked to has a different instance where they've spoken to a family member and have had an issue. I had someone come to my office, they held a tablet up to me and they said, Tayshawn, this was my family member. The person had 2 black eyes. They had 2 black eyes, ripped out hair. And they're like, what do I do now? And that's not just one family. So I'm saying to you, you know, it's hard to take constructive criticism. I went to a protest and a family came to me and said, "You're not doing enough for people." That was like the hardest thing to hear, because I got staff in my office who work hard every day, just like you said. Hey, I got staff that work hard every day. We're not questioning that. But when people give us constructive criticism, and I got that constructive criticism, I got to take a step back and look. I got to eat it. I got to own it and say, you know what? The Center for Law and Justice could do better. Our language could be different. How we help people could be different. How we meet people could be different. How I meet people, how I greet people could be different. And so I'm just imploring you, from the person that I walked into your office and you said transparency, let's have this equal conversation. Keep it 100 with me. I'm keeping it 100 with you. There are a lot of allegations here, right, wrong, or indifferent. You have an obligation to look into them. Change the perspective of people sitting here, right? And so I'm just hoping that that same conversation that we had about transparency will come through and you'll meet us halfway.
Next, we have Common Council Leader, 2nd Ward, Derek Johnson.
Good afternoon. So, first of all, I want to say thank you to everybody that spoke and the way that you spoke, because you can hear your passion about some of the things that's on this paper. And I'm a person that considers myself informed with the community, and there's a lot of stuff on here that I wasn't aware of, right? But I also want to say that we have a mechanism that was developed, and I want to say after Dante Ivy's death,
Yes.
all right, that is with alert, right? And when I talk to everybody as individuals, what they expect to see in Pastor Traynor, he's not like all of us are different in how we advocate for what we think is right or wrong. He's not a yeller and screamer. He's not a person that's going to be attacking. And so when he told me about alert, many years ago, I jumped right on it. And I think the first meeting that we had, the sheriff was a part of, and we didn't talk about any business. It was like a get to know each other thing. And that meeting always stood out because there was some heavy things that were shared in that meeting, right? And going forward, I have always had the ability, because when I get those phone calls, I have, in the last 12 years, a great relationship with Sheriff Apple, but Mike Lyons is a little brother, that's family. And so, the 2 conversations that I had with him in this last month was one, Jamaica Miles said about the Community Oversight Board. And I had that conversation with Sheriff Apple. But secondly, with Mike, I talked about the video. And what the gentleman said, the thing that bothered me the most is that wall that was formed. And when I asked of him, I said, listen, it's people that want to be able to have that confident conversation with folks. They can help us by not doing that. Because when they did that, it took away my effectiveness as a person that can advocate. And so one of the things like state assemblywoman probably never seen me in this, and we worked together the last 4 years. Anytime I come to this meeting like this, you're gonna get 100% Derek Johnson, because I don't have to be on the defensive. There's people here saying a lot of things that normally I have to walk in these meetings and say, because nobody else is gonna say them. And just the fact that there's so many groups that are speaking on behalf, it shows that there's something wrong, right? The thing that I love about when I talk to them, because I call the mayor and I'll say something's wrong, they'll try to answer that. Oh no, they'll answer it right on the phone call. And so with my relationship with them, we don't agree all the time. Sometimes we on the opposite sides of the conversation. But we may have been able to have this meeting because Ronnie is a resource, right? But Derek Johnson is a resource as well. And if somebody is not responding to you in a manner, sometimes that phone call can come to me, and or I could talk to Pastor, or I could talk to these 2 gentlemen down there, and that's what the network and the team is really about. The thing that I say the negative experience about becoming an elected official is people treat you like you know, like before I became an elected official, I was sitting, we were doing all the similar work. And then when you become an elected official, people be like, oh, you're one of them. And what I work hard to be is the person that, you know, when we need that voice, when we need that phone call, whatever we need, that that I'm there to be able to execute that. And so I just think that through Alert, we can address a lot of this stuff, you know, and then get addressed faster. And so, like I said, I'm glad that we had to get here today because it gives us no place but, you know, the improvement. And like I said, thank you for your constant advocacy. But, you know, just as some of us are learning to work together better, you know, that could be taken even a step further. So I want to say thank you for this meeting and the opportunity to speak. And once again, thank you for saying what needs to be said in a manner that it could be received. Because a lot of times, through the yelling, the shouting, the finger pointing, a lot of messages and a lot of opportunity is missed. So.
Thank you. So we're gonna have Freedom Unshackled, but I'm gonna say this, right? It's really about the culture in the jail. It's really about the officers that may need some additional training, and there's some oversight that needs to happen. And I understand that we keep on saying allegations, but when you're from a community, when you see and you hear and you feel on a constant basis over year after year after year about the treatment inside of the facility, that is highlighting that it is a problem. Not a reflection, Sheriff Apple, that you are causing the problem or you intend for the problem to happen. So I really pray and hope that after this meeting, this ignites a full investigation internally to make sure that your officers are complying with your rules, your regulations, your level of ethics, and your care for your facility and the inmates in there, the incarcerated individuals in there. We're going to turn it back over to Freedom Unshackled.
And I haven't seen your piece of paper. I haven't had a chance to look at it and all the allegations. I do know that, and again, I'm not going to debate this back and forth with you, but I can tell you that I'm going to assume, and I know we hate that word, that a lot of it has been investigated. And if you think for a second that we don't hold people accountable, I've terminated officers, I've disciplined officers on one of the cases that's been brought up here a few times, and you mentioned unions and things like that in civil service, and you know that I can't just go in and go, you're terminated, you're out, right? There is a process. And I fired people, and unfortunately, arbitrators have even put them back in the jail. And we've shaken our heads. We're like, you know what? We try. Well, we'll have to try harder, right? But I just want you to know that we've added hundreds of additional cameras because I don't want to sound like we're being reactive, but you know, something would happen and they'd say, well, it was in that stairwell, we didn't have an angle or whatever. Add cameras. One thing. We've added body-worn cameras throughout the jail. We've re-disseminated our article of use of force policy. As a result, even prior to any of this coming to the surface, right after the Brooks case, I'm like, you know what? We are get out in front of this. We are not going to tolerate this. I have zero tolerance for that. I've actually had the superintendent go out on the tiers with the majors and let everybody know. This is what we're hearing. I don't want to see it. Because we all know you're throwing up crap against the wall, something's going to stick, right? So I don't want you to think that like we're just completely deaf to what you're saying. We have taken several measures, several steps, held several officers accountable, disciplined officers, not as a result of this small window. I'm talking about, you know, over the years. But again, I'm more than happy to sit down with you and we'll look at it. Some of the things that have been investigated, we can check the box and go look at this is what we did, this is the result of that. But I also want you to think, and everybody in Batman here included keeps saying like, yo bro, call my phone. That's kind of like the last step. I'm kind of the last step. There are grievances. There's the State Commission on Corrections. There's a community review board from the Commission of Corrections, which actually, just so you know, Ronnie, I actually reached out to the commissioner and said, hey, let's get somebody local on that board, and I have the candidate. So I don't want you to think that we just sit here and don't do anything about this. I hear complaints. I do have people that call me. I have, unfortunately, a lot of social media accounts too, and I get all the instant messages about different complaints and different issues. But I don't want you to think that like this is all something new and that we don't do anything. We have done a lot of proactive steps up at that correctional facility, a lot of them. Now, I'm not going to sit here and again debate, you know, what you have in front of you, or what's an allegation, what's a fact, or what's fiction. I don't know. All right, I do not know. But I don't want you just to think that, you know what, they're not doing anything up there. That's all.
Thank you. And I don't think that we think they're not doing anything. We just want, number one, the process, the gaslighting. I understand, I run nonprofits, I have staff, I gotta do things in the back end. We just want more transparency and a better relationship. So as community leaders, when our community is coming to us with their concerns and with their grievances, we can at least assure them that we have confidence that it's being taken care of, or that our relationship with the sheriff's office and his facility, that we can be able to mitigate the issues.
Sheriff, can I speak for a second?
I'm
sorry, go right ahead.
Yeah. So, thank you, number one, before Marina wraps us up, for bringing us all together, right? I just want to say, from a Ronnie perspective, not Freedom Unshackled, that I would have rather not had to do this, right? I would have rather not had to do this. I would have rather had a conversation with you and we figure this out. This took some while for me to get to this point that I said, okay, we need to pull in other organizations. I was beating my head against the wall about you, Sheriff Apple, not wanting to come against you. But as a formerly incarcerated person who has seen some things and lived through some things, I couldn't ignore the mother, the wife, the mother, the man, the mother. You understand what I'm saying? I couldn't ignore it, which made all of this happen. And Derek, with all due respect, Freedom Unshackled will not mediate through any other organization except for the ones that initially came to you, that signed on to that letter. That's who we will mediate with and deal with moving forward. If you didn't feel that this was something that, as a community organization, that these people mattered enough to say something is wrong, let me join you, then that window of opportunity is closed for Freedom Unshackled. I can say that.
Actually, I disagree. I'm glad we had this meeting.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know half these organizations existed.
That's
I didn't know
insane.
any of them. So I don't have any issues, and I'll meet with you guys as many times as you want. I have no issue with it. But,
all right.
And there's power in numbers. I congratulate you for joining forces.
So
Sadly,
what we're gonna say though, before Marina starts, because everybody, the time is we've been here a while. There's still people in that facility whose parents wanted to be here today that were afraid to be here today because they still have family members there. I will, if you want to, show you the email. One woman wanted to be here, but she is scared to death to speak her son's name out loud in front of members, staff people who were back at Albany County Correctional Facility. So with that being said, hopefully we can get this together, Sheriff Apple, but Marina's going to close us off for the day.
I think
That's okay. Obviously, my comments are
At all.
You can go ahead
But
and
we'll
pass
do
the
it
trainer. Pass the trainer.
We can have Marina close it up.
Marina, close it up.
Okay,
if
we've,
you want to say something, you're more than
Oh, wait, it'll be something that I'll do personally with those relations.
I think of course.
Everybody, we've heard a lot of very, very important messages from a lot of different people and a lot of different groups. And one of the things that's been discussed is that people are being brutalized, retaliated against, and subject to conditions that are not just inhumane but life-threatening. We've also heard that this may be a manifestation of a systemic, institutionalized culture. While ultimately responsibility falls on your office, the daily operations of Albany County Correctional Facility rest in the hands of Superintendent Michael Lyons. Under his leadership, this culture of violence has been allowed to fester unchecked. Every act of brutality that goes unpunished, every grievance that is ignored, and every incarcerated individual subjected to retaliation is a direct result of failed leadership and a lack of accountability. If this continues, it is because those in power choose to allow it. We met here today with clear, actionable demands, and we expect them to be met. These are our demands. End the brutal beatings of incarcerated individuals. The unchecked violence against people in custody must stop immediately. Any officer engaging in brutality or covering up abuse must face swift legal and disciplinary consequences. Establish an independent oversight commission. The jail cannot be left to investigate itself. A truly independent body must be created to monitor conditions and hold officers accountable. Accountability for officers and staff who cause harm. The district attorney must take action against correctional staff who assault incarcerated individuals, holding them to the same legal standards as anyone else. Union and Sheriff's Department accountability. No officer shall commit felony violence against an incarcerated person should be shielded by the union or department leadership. Accountability cannot be optional. End the use of abandoned unsanitary tiers as punishment. Housing people in areas contaminated with mold and rodent feces is a public health crisis. Forcing individuals into these hazardous conditions, especially those with compromised immune systems, is cruel and dangerous. This practice must end immediately. Implement a transparent legal visit refusal process. And this is really important. Attorneys must receive signed documentation when an individual refuses a visit, ensuring refusals are not being manipulated or coerced by staff. Timely release of video footage. When an incident occurs, requested footage must be provided without unnecessary delays. Withholding evidence obstructs justice. A fair and retaliation-free grievance process. Incarcerated individuals must be able to file grievances without fear of retaliation. An independent review process must be established to ensure complaints are taken seriously. Accountability for the medical department. Families should not have to fight for access to their loved ones' medical records. There must be a clear and timely process for incarcerated individuals to authorize access to their health information. County legislature oversight and accountability. The Albany County Legislature must take a responsibility for holding this facility and its administration accountable. It's not enough for legislative members to meet with the sheriff. They must personally visit the facility to see the conditions firsthand. We demand that the legislative body conduct an extensive audit of the Albany County Correctional Facility, investigating the number of beatings and violent incidents involving corrections staff, the number of incarcerated individuals hospitalized due to injuries sustained inside the jail, the number of arraignments for alleged assaults against officers, and whether these cases reflect real incidents or are being used as a form of retaliation. The disciplinary infractions process, including the frequency of write-ups, who is issuing them, and whether they are being punished whether they are being used punitively to extend time served or limit privileges. Additionally, We demand transparency through the fulfillment of our FOIL, Freedom of Information Law requests, including the number of people taken to Colony Court for arraignments on charges related to alleged attacks on officers, records of how many people have been taken from Albany County Jail to Albany Medical Center for serious injuries such as fractures and broken bones. Full documentation of the jail's grievance policies and procedures. We will not allow these demands to be ignored or delayed. Transparency, accountability, and basic human dignity are not privileges, they are rights, as everyone here has mentioned. Sheriff Apple, you have publicly committed to serving this community, but let us be clear. The individuals inside Albany County Correctional Facility are part of this community. Their lives matter. Their safety matters. A community is only as strong as its commitments to justice for all. We are watching. The community is watching, and we will not be silent.
Can I just make a comment? My name again is Merton Simpson. I'm Vice Chair of the Albany County Legislative Black Caucus. I'm a long-term social justice advocate, and I view my role as a county legislator as an extension of that. I came to Albany in 1978, and I was dealing with the issue of excessive force in the criminal justice system before I came to Albany. I go back to the deaths of, Clifford Glover and, Randy Evans back in 1977. I worked extensively along with Mark Mitchell with the late Alice Green. We went all over the state in the Jesse Davis case. And so what I would say is this. I'm one of the few people in the country that actually deals with critical race theory. And what we have is a problem of organizational culture. I analogize the situation we have here to the late John Kerry, who was Secretary of Defense, who, when monitoring sexual abuse in the military, was committed to stopping it, but every year it got worse. There's an issue of organizational culture, it's an issue of hearts and minds. And I come from the point of view of solutions. So I know I don't have all the answers, but I am committed to working with everybody in this room to come up with a process and a system that we can monitor on an ongoing basis. And I'll be the first to say, the sheriff has never not answered my personal calls, but two things can be true at the same time. You can have the best person at the top of the organization, but it doesn't change the long-term minds and hearts of the people in the organization. Right. And so the open call I would put to the sheriff is, I have the end of this video from the Marquise Norwood situation, and I see in a hallway a phalanx of over a dozen police officers. And so the question I would have is, what organizational structure do we have to put in place so that these things, if they're one time or whether they're a systematic process, can stop so people can get the humane treatment that they deserve? And so again, I'm open to work with everybody and anybody who knows me knows my track record. And Sam Fine and I are personally committed, along with the rest of the Legislative Black Caucus, to get to the bottom of this, because this is just not a problem in Albany County Jail. This is a problem in America. Right. We have a fetish of guns and violence. The situation we have now politically, and I don't want to get long, is something we've never seen before, where people are being disappeared in the street. Mark Mitchell can tell you I addressed a group of Palestinians this Saturday, and I broke down in tears because of the number of children who are being killed. But we're disappearing people here in the United States. Even the SS and Gestapo came with uniforms. I mean, we're in a very strange situation, and now that it's been made acceptable that violence can be done indiscriminately, there's a trickle-down effect. There's a kind of licentiousness about violence now that we've never seen before. So the answer is still on this level or on any level with the people collectively. And we have to be up to the challenge. And Albany is small enough that we should be able to get our arms around this. This is not acceptable. Yes. And collectively, we're going to find a solution.
Yes.
Thank you all for coming. I'll probably send an email out We'll put some dates that, you know, maybe we can have some smaller groups get together. It won't be next month, it'll probably be within the next 2 hours. And, whatever, we can all get some resolution out of this. Thank you.